Hi, I'm Zeinab Bailoun and this is Eco-Terrorism. What is aquaponics? What are the pros and cons of an aquaponics system and where can it best be applied? Here to discuss this issue with us today is Ms. Jena Ezzedine, an aquaponics systems activator. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
So before we start our discussion for today, let's watch this video as an introduction to what aquaponics is all about.
Aquaponics is a fascinating way to garden and grow your plants, fruits, and vegetables. Aquaponics is basically the combination of two things. Aquaculture, which is breeding fish, raising fish, taking care of fish, and hydroponics, which is basically soilless growing, where you grow with nothing but water most of the time, but a lot of people will consider hydroponics anything that doesn't have any soil. Now, you bring these two things together and you have aquaponics. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is you can have your reservoir, which is going to hold your water, typically for a hydroponic system, and it's going to hold the fertilizer for your hydroponic system. But in this case, your reservoir is a fish tank. And inside your fish tank, of course, you have fish. And when you feed those fish, you are going to get fertilizer for your plants. So you take the combination of aquaculture, which is feeding fish, taking care of fish, making sure fish are healthy. And then you take the combination of hydroponic gardening, which is using water to recirculate or using water in order to water your plants consistently without you having to be there. And you have aquaponics. It's a very fascinating system and is extremely simple. It sounds very complicated when you are new to it, but let me tell you, it is absolutely simple to do and easy to understand, and we're here to help you guys understand it better. Now, naturally, when you say, what is something, your next question is usually, how does it work? So let me explain to you how aquaponics works and how your plants are going to be able to grow. Like I said, aquaponics and hydroponics typically are going to be on a recirculating watering system. So that means that your plants are going to be sitting in a grow bed and they are going to be receiving water automatically because you are going to have a water pump that is hooked up from your fish tank, going from your fish tank and taking that water to your grow beds or to your growing channels, depending on the type of system you have. Basically, the water is just taking that to your plants. Now, what you're going to have is that water is filled with bacteria and filled with good things for your plants. When your fish excrete their waste, typically it will come out as ammonia. It will always come out as ammonia. Now, there's a type of bacteria that will grow naturally in your fish tank, and it will convert that ammonia into nitrites. Once it is converted into nitrites, there is another bacteria that will convert the nitrites into nitrates. Once they have been converted into nitrates, they are now consumable by the plant. They are now fertilizer for the plant.
So, Ms. Ezzedine, you're currently working on an aquaponics project. Can you tell us more about what this project is and where the idea came from to start it?
So I went last summer to the Dominican Republic with Global Leadership Adventures, which is it's a camp for teenagers, and you go and you do community service projects. So there, one of the projects that we did was building an aquaponics system. And so I came back to Lebanon and I started volunteering at Zeinab Bailoun, the Palestinian refugee camp. And when I got there, I got really into it and I started teaching twice a week. And I thought, this is a perfect place to put an aquaponics system.
How long did you stay in the Dominican Republic for?
We stayed for about 1 month. Yeah.
And how long were you working on the aquaponics project for?
Well, so there we did different things. We built schools, we cleaned beaches, but for approximately a week and a half, we started building the system.
And what exactly attracted you to the system? What made you feel that this system could be applied in a refugee camp? And why would it make the refugees' lives better?
Well, definitely because a really big issue for Zeinab Bailoun and all of the Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon is that they don't have very much water. And most of the organizations there have an issue with sustainability. They depend a lot on financial aid from outside associations like UNRWA or just donors in general. So I thought implementing an aquaponics system for one of these organizations will provide them with the profit that they need, and the refugees themselves can work on the aquaponics system. And planting is obviously something that is needed in these, because it's full of cement and the camps are very closed. So.
What do you feel some of the pros and cons are of, you know, an aquaponic system? We can start in general, then we can go more specific. In general, what are the pros and cons of an aquaponic system?
Well, definitely starting a system, you need a lot of money for that. So what we're doing now is we're still fundraising to pay for most of the things. And definitely, I mean, like I said, planting it in urban areas, you can get profit. It's a great like recreational activity for the people who are planting it, and I mean it's healthy.
So it would be good environmentally, socially.
Yeah, exactly.
What are some of the other benefits that you think, you know, say on a personal level, how would a person in his day-to-day life in a refugee camp experience life differently because of this aquaponic system?
Well, so usually people in these refugee camps, it's really hard for them to get outside of the camp and go out, do different things. And because they're very claustrophobic and they're just really tall buildings, going on a roof and being with plants and soil, it's definitely something that could be an achievement for the women.
And how big do you think of an impact this would have? Are you thinking, for example, of expanding after Burj Brajne, say going to other places? Do you think it could be something that could be applied in other places?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had a meeting with UNRWA the other day, and we were talking about after implementing a system in Burj Brajne, doing one in Sabra, and then Marlies. I mean, you can do it anywhere basically, as long as you have a sufficient amount of water and space.
Do you think NGOs here have been willing to consider this before, or is it something relatively new?
I mean, I've heard of rooftop planting, which is basically just planting on the roof. And I think someone has done a hydroponic system, but aquaponics is a lot different, and it's a lot healthier because you know you're not using fertilizer, which again is less expensive, and you're also getting fish. So the reason why I wanted to do aquaponics and not hydroponics in this particular place in Burj Brajne is because this women's association, the center has a catering class, and the catering class they learn how to cook and then they sell their food. So if I could provide them with fish and with vegetables, I mean that's enough for them to get a profit as well.
What about people's reactions, especially, for example, in the camps? Have you felt that they've been receptive to the idea? Have they found it kind of strange to start such a project in their camp?
I mean, definitely strange, but
hopefully in a positive way.
Yes, but so far people are really excited about it and really interested. And I think once we start our first system, I think it could definitely expand and do more.
Do you think the government has some sort of role or should have a role in such programs?
Definitely, because if aquaponics were to be applied, I mean, in a bigger area, it could have an enormous impact environmentally in Lebanon and also on the people in Lebanon. But yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the environmental impact?
Yeah. Well, so aquaponics, I mean, you only lose 3% of the water because it's a closed off system. So water it's not that much of an issue. Not just that, but as long as you're having plants in a very urban area, I mean that's definitely an advantage environmentally. And so there's the water conservation, and then you also have food miles, which is something where when you're planting, say in the Bekaa, and you have all these plants, you have to bring the food to Beirut, and I mean this takes like trucks and uses gas and etc. So an aquaponics system, you can do it wherever. You can do it right outside your house if you wanted to, and just take the food.
And you're
from there.
saving all of these costs. You're kind of avoiding them.
Yeah. There's also land conservation. So one aquaponic system, per foot, you can grow twice as much as any normal farming systems or farming techniques. So it definitely saves the space.
So to start with, when you started with working on your project and beginning the whole collaboration process, who do you collaborate with, and how has it been so far?
Well, so I'm planning on going back to the Dominican Republic this summer. So there's someone who came with me to Global Leadership Adventures. He's the person who has been teaching me how to build the system, what type of things I need. I've also been talking to...
Is he based in the Dominican Republic?
Well, no, he lives in the States, in the US. But he's also coming back with me this summer. We're going to build another system there. There's also a professor, Professor Saud in AUB. He has been doing aquaponics. He has an aquaponics system in AUB, and so he has been helping me with that. I've also needed to talk to UNRWA many times, which is the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for refugees in Lebanon. And because we're taking their roof in Burj Barajne, so there's collaboration with them.
Have you faced many difficulties so far in implementing this project?
Yeah, definitely. There's where to get the products in Lebanon, like the grow beds, and the necessary pumps and solar panels for making the system. And also, it took quite a lot of time to get the approval for the system, because I mean, definitely in Burj Barajne especially, you can't. I mean, the architecture of most of the buildings are very fragile. So you need a space that is that can withhold tanks and a system on top of the roof. So we had to use one of the UNRWA buildings.
We'll talk a little bit more about this right after the short break, and we'll continue our discussion, so please stay tuned.
Eye on the government. Eye on the Constitution. Eye on the system. Eye on the people, and eye on the events. Eye on Lebanon, a show that zooms in and out of the latest events with a vivid lens.
The crisis of capitalism, the European impasse, the energy shortages, the emerging power of Asia, the economic power of the Arab world, the economic debate, informative, revealing, and progressive. It discusses the economic event of the world.
Economic debate, where the numbers reveal the truth.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at this short video that shows us how to build an aquaponics system before we continue.
Hello from everyone here at Easy DIY Aquaponics. My name is Andrew, and today we are going to show you how easy it really is to build your own aquaponics system at home.
So, Ms. Ezzedine, you've seen the video and you saw what it includes, and basically it's about how to build an aquaponics system. What about your experience with building an aquaponics system? Was it similar to this?
Well, so the one that we did in the Dominican Republic was a lot bigger. This is one that you can do like on your balcony or in front of your house. But definitely, I mean, they're not as hard as you would think to make, and you don't have to use all of the products that they used. You can make your own. I mean, the one that Professor Ahmad Saoud showed me in AUB, he created a system out of just regular daily things. He made filters out of like toys and stuff. So, I mean, as long as you're creative, this is definitely not, I mean, it's quite easy.
And how much would you say approximately it would cost to create something like that at home?
Well, so again, it matters the size. Something like that would be most likely less than $1,000, and it matters if you actually buy the things that he used in the video, or if you find them yourself. I mean, it could be less than 800 too, or yeah.
And would it be sustainable? Would it be something that you could keep going for quite a while?
Definitely. I mean, of course, there's always the issue of maintenance. You have to keep it going, but if you take care of it, it's quite simple. Yeah.
How effective is implementing such a system like this at home going to be? Like, does it create problems at home? Is it more difficult to maintain?
Well, yeah. On a smaller scale, it's not as difficult to maintain, but the profit of it is much less. Yeah. Because also in Lebanon, we have an issue of electricity and things. So you have to keep the system going, or else the fish won't receive enough oxygen, and you have to make sure that the electricity isn't cut. But if that's taken care of, I mean, you can grow much more than regular planting.
So one of the benefits that you were talking about of aquaponics is, amongst the environmental benefits, is the issue of water conservation, because aquaponics uses 90% less water than traditional farming, and water and nutrients are basically recycled in a closed-loop fashion, which conserves water. What can you tell us about your experience of this in the Dominican Republic?
Well, in the Dominican Republic, water wasn't as much of an issue. That was more here in Burj Barajne, but space was an issue, and I mean, the money for keeping these things, keeping regular farming put together is much more, again, with the fertilizer and etc. And the environment there, especially with it's like sort of tropical, so the fish could survive, and it had much more of a, how do I say this? Like
environment, like perhaps it was conducive to...
Yeah, exactly. But here in Burj Barajne, because the water there is, it's salty, you have to get water from tanks. These big trucks come around the camp, and they give out tanks. And so because of that, I mean, it was definitely much easier for us to use aquaponics because it's closed loop and you can reuse the water.
Over here?
Yeah, here.
And you would say the differences, are there any other major differences between the issue of aquaponics here and the implementation of it over in the Dominican Republic?
Yes. Here, you have to have a certain type of fish, which the fish that we're going to use, tilapia, because it gets a bit cold in the winter. So also because of that, we have to build a greenhouse above the system.
So increases the cost.
Yeah, exactly. In the Dominican Republic, that wasn't necessary at all because the environment there is perfect for fish and the certain plants that we wanted to grow.
Some of the other environmental benefits I wanted to mention of aquaponics include the issue that it protects rivers and lakes, because no harmful fertilizer runoff into the watershed basically occurs. And in efforts to maintain nutrient-rich soil, farms have to use a lot of fertilizers, and the excess fertilizers eventually make it into the rivers, and there are countless harmful side effects to this fact. But in aquaponics, you don't actually have this issue. And it's probably something that we might see the benefits of a lot here in Lebanon particularly, where we have, rivers and lakes that are polluted.
Exactly. And not just that, but fertilizer itself, I mean, it's bad for us, like when we eat it. I mean, the fish, the nitrate that they give out is much more healthy than any of the fertilizer put in the plants. And not just that, but there's less of a chance of the plants here from dying, because the fertilizer it brings bacteria in normal agriculture. So there's less of a chance of you losing your crop.
There's also the issue of gas conservation, which you mentioned previously about the issue of food miles. It's a problem. What can you also tell me about energy conservation in general? How is it more effective when you're implementing an aquaponic system?
Well, so especially the fact that we're going to be using solar panels to give energy to the pumps. The thing is, normal agriculture, because it's such a large area of land, you need trucks, you need these big water pumps to get all the water flowing throughout them, and then you need, the machines to get all the crop, and that definitely takes a lot more energy than just a simple aquaponic system that's much smaller and can grow twice as much.
There's also the issue of land conservation as kind of, another environmental benefit, because in aquaponics you're usually using structures that already exist. Is that correct? Like, as you were mentioning, the issue of using roofs that you already have, perhaps finding places that that are already there, and it's an issue of saving space.
Yeah, and definitely, especially the fact that you can do it. In urban areas, urban planting is probably, at least in the 21st century, one of the most important things that should be implemented more, because, like you said, there's a lot more buildings being built, and land has become a big issue. So land conservation concerning aquaponics is an enormous benefit.
Let's say we talk about health and nutrition effects. You were mentioning previously the issue of fertilizer, and fish don't cause the same problems for us that fertilizer does. What can you tell us about fish and how they are more beneficial to us in terms of how they make the aquaponic system work?
Well, so the fish themselves, because they're not being grown, they don't. There are such thing as fish farming, right? And in that case, you have to feed them different things, and especially in the Mediterranean, the fish have mercury in them. But because of the plants, because they're receiving nutrients from the plants, because of the system, they don't have any of these issues.
Problems.
Yeah, there's no salmonella, there's no mercury, there's no hormones in the fish or the plants. Yeah.
And in general, this is beneficial or good for our health as well. But what about the taste? Can you tell us about the differences in terms of the taste?
Yes. So the taste concerning larger farming, like larger agriculture, is usually much less tasteful. Again, it matters the different fish that you're using, because different fish, they give off different types of nutrients. But especially tilapia, they usually it should be that an aquaponic system has a much better taste than hydroponics and normal agriculture.
So as kind of a final question to sum things up for today, where do you see, or how do you see the future of aquaponics in Lebanon?
In Lebanon, it matters how this one project goes, but I really think that if it works well, then it can be implemented anywhere by anyone, and especially if it catches on.
And hopefully it will.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So thanks to our guest in the studio, Ms. Jena Ezzedine, for joining us, and to you for watching. That's it for today. See you next week.